Did you know that 90% of the world's millionaires invest in real estate? Well, I'm Angel with the Academy Presents Real Estate Investing Rocks, and I'm here to help you if you want to go for your piece of that pie.
One of the biggest pieces of feedback we've gotten from folks, especially in the multifamily space, if they started in single family and then they scale into multifamily, a lot of them are familiar with self-directed IRAs, and that's really the only thing that they've known up to that point. And again, there's no such thing as a bad tool, and self-directed IRAs are not bad. However, there are some hurdles and problems that have been voiced to us. The biggest thing is that you cannot take depreciation deduction if you invest with a self-directed IRA. One of the main reasons for getting into real estate is the depreciation and the tax benefits. So the idea of investing into real estate with a product that doesn't let you take the depreciation deduction, like 2 and 2 doesn't equal 4 in that scenario. So that's a big problem. Also, deferred taxes usually means more taxes paid later, right? So, and I want to emphasize this: it is not a tax deduction. People who say the money they put into their IRA is a deduction, no, sir. It is a deferral. That is money that is going to grow, and you're going to pay taxes on it later on. And everybody has their own opinion, but I don't think taxes are going to go down in the future. Just me. Also, restricted access to funds held. We have to realize that the R in IRA stands for restriction. There are disqualified persons. There are disqualified transactions. There's a lot of restriction there on what you can use the money for, the who, what, when, where, why, not to mention the reporting that has to be done. So there's a couple more elements of, couple more barriers there as far as being able to access your money and then reporting that. And then at the end of the day, we have a possible UBIT taxation. So even on an account that most of these are set up on a pre-tax basis, so you don't have to pay taxes until later, you will have an additional tax if you go out and make too much money. So you can invest, but don't go out and be too successful, right? So anyway, like I said, those are some hurdles that we've actually had voiced to us in the self-directed or IRA real estate investing world. So the infinite banking concept, we actually just try to solve the problems that people are having. Number one is, yes, you can take the depreciation deduction. Not to mention, there are other tax deductions, not deferral. There are additional tax deductions that you get for utilizing the loan strategy in IBC. So it's taking the real estate tax benefits as well as adding more. In addition to that, your money can grow tax-free. Everybody talks about Roths, but again, Roths have 2 R's because they have double restrictions. Roth IRA, there's 2 R's, double the restrictions. You can't make too much money. You can't put so much in, all of that stuff. So this has actually been referred to as the rich man's Roth because there's no income limits. There's no contribution limits, right? You have the ability to save your money on a tax-free basis. But inside of that, whenever you have these cash values, David was referring to this, you have a guaranteed growth element. And guaranteed is not a word that people hear in the finance or investing world very often, as in never. And this is literally the only asset that is uncorrelated to the market. Everything else out there is. People think that having stocks and bonds is a diversified portfolio. No, stocks go up, bonds go down. Stocks go down, bonds go up. That's literally intercorrelated. That's not diversification. And then when we actually look at, 2008 and even at the beginning of this year, the stock market tanks, and what do the feds do? They lower interest rates. So then even treasury yields and all of those are going down along with the stock market. So my point to that is this is the only uncorrelated asset. It has a guaranteed growth that will increase every single year, regardless of what the stock market does. So that's the only one that's going to do that. We also have full control and liquidity. This strategy has been called, infinite banking, be your own banker, bank on yourself, whatever. The point is you maintain control and you get to decide what you want to do with your money, when you want to do with it, because you want to. The only 2 questions they ask when you want your money is how much do you want and where do you want it sent? That's it. And then you also have no UBIT taxation. In fact, there's no reporting at all on this. The only thing you get to report are any tax deductions that you take from it. There's no reporting whatsoever. So there's really 4 elements, 4 pillars of infinite banking. So all of these are what we are going to incorporate with anybody that actually decides to become an infinite banker. So number one, lower taxes, like we just talked about. There's a lot of tax benefits to this now and later, right? We can't be short-sighted. We need to be able to make sure this is comprehensive across our whole lives. And I've honestly never met anybody say, "Nah, I'm good with my taxes. I'll just continue to pay more." So lowering taxes is a good thing. Increased leverage, right? Anybody in real estate understands the power of leverage, right? We leverage OPM, we leverage assets, we leverage other people, right? So we have teams because there are different people that are better at certain things than others. So increasing leverage inside of your own liquid assets. And Angel, you mentioned this, right? Being able to use your money to go invest in real estate while you continue to earn interest inside the account at the same time, that, my friends, is leverage. And then, of course, on top of that, increased control. We are all, like I said, becoming more awakened, enlightened, jaded, whatever you want to call it, relinquishing control of our finances. But really what that means is we're relinquishing control of our future and just throwing it into the air and hoping that it works out the way they say it will. That's for the birds, man. That most of us in real estate, we want to take the, here in Texas, we say we want to take the bull by the horns. You can take the steering wheel, whatever animal your state deals with. You can take it by its head and be in control of what's going on. It's your money. You have access to it when you want to, and you're going to go out and do with that money whatever it is that you want. So bringing that control back into your pocket and also being in control of the terms and not having me, David, or some big company knocking on your door saying, "Hey, you need to put money in this or put money in that." That's not how this works. Now, lastly, I want to point out the lower risk element. So lower risk, we talked about the guaranteed growth and it's non-correlated to the stock market. But at this point, a lot of people get confused and they bring up the fact that, well, increased leverage and lower risk are not two things that we typically see, right? More people think, oh, if I want higher reward, I have to take higher risk. And if I take lower risk, I'm going to get a lower reward. Here's the thing. If we look at those characteristics, we're looking at the characteristics of a certain asset or another tool. The physical characteristics and the functioning characteristics of a hammer are much different than a saw. This is a completely separate asset class, right? We can't sit here and put our money all into the same bucket, all into the same asset class. This is something completely different. So its characteristics are much different, meaning we can have increased leverage and lower risk at the same time. Anything that you would add on this, David, or Angel? I know you've kind of seen a lot of this. Anything that you would, I guess, add into that?
Other than it's just completely different. I mean, you like what you were saying, you can't take what you learn about risk and reward in, say, real estate and try and project that onto this because it's a different beast.
Yes.
Yes.
Very different. Totally different.
This works in concert with, right? It accelerates. There's a few things that are addressed here. One is legacy, which I think that a lot of people want to, and they have a mindset of wanting to pass down wealth. And they want to do it through, purchasing assets that create cash flow, right? The one thing that when it comes to an estate, the one thing that I am uncertain about is when I pass away, hopefully a long time from now, right? What will the estate tax be? How much of what I have created will go down to my kids? Or my kids, grandkids, whatever, who I want to pass down wealth to. Right now, Trump's done a lot of good things for the estate tax, but we don't know what that'll be in the future. So with the death benefit, it is the only thing that I know will go directly to my heirs, right? Tax-free, Uncle Sam can't touch. So that's an element there. Then there's an element of actually having protection of your assets, and then also positioning yourself in these four pillars, right? We really want to focus on one thing that I think a lot of people miss sight of because they're so focused on growth, which isn't a bad thing. We all want to grow and earn a rate of return, but I think where people miss, or lose sight and miss the mark a little bit is mitigating wealth eroding factors, and that is just as important as growth and rate of return. Is mitigating these eroding factors, which will greatly reduce what we have on the back end. So if we're able to take any sort of a strategy and use a financial tool, I love what Erica says, right? There's no bad financial tool. I'm sure if you've heard somebody say something bad about every financial product. I mean, if I had, $1,000, that anytime somebody said something bad about a financial product, I wouldn't need to be doing this. I'd be retired on the beach, right? And the reality is that each product was built and designed for something specific. So there's not a bad product, there's bad strategy, bad implementation of that product. So when you fully understand the broad picture of what you're trying to do, and you start to really make importance out of protection, growth, and then keeping your growth, right, through mitigating wealth eroding factors, then it becomes a really solid plan. So with this, you're actually adding an element of accelerating of growth, being able to use the infinite banking strategy, right? Leverage that dollar to earn internally a rate of return, because you're earning more inside the policy than when it's costing you to borrow against it, right? So now you're earning inside the policy and you have that dollar outside in a real estate investment, right? Kiyosaki talks about giving $1 multiple jobs, and this is a specific strategy that actually does that. Right? But also at the same time, you're using an asset that is uncorrelated to any of the mess in 2000s, right after the dot-com bubble bust, 2008, 2009, right? The Great Recession. And then, this year with COVID, I mean, people are still getting 6-7%, dividend, deposits into their whole life. So it's a way of putting something into your financial plan that is going to check off several different things, right? Legacy, right? Lowering taxes, increasing your ability to leverage, right? OPM is a good thing, and you're able to leverage your money to access OPM. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, because you're actually borrowing from the insurance company who's using your cash as collateral. That's why they leave it alone growing, compounded. That's how this strategy really works. But you're also adding an element of control and lower risk, because the asset that you're using inside of this is an asset that isn't affected through these ups and down cycles. So you're combining, actually, if you look at in the financial world, there are two economic powers, basically. And one is the rate of return power. It's an investment power, right? Anything that goes up and down in value. This is your business. This is your investments, your real estate, gold, silver, right? Anything that can fluctuate in value. That is a rate of return, and it's an economic power, right? A lot of us tend to focus on that. What a lot of people don't understand is that the other economic power is actuarial science. And in fact, actuarial science is used in pension creation. So pensions were created based on this. So actually using this product into your plan is now combining the guarantees, the protection element of actuarial science, which is the ability to actually use a product to really accurately predict the growth and scale of this cash value. And then you're using it in concert with your rate of return power, right? So in the way they work is the pros of the rate of return, the higher the upsides, right, offset the cons of the kind of steady, not sexy rate of returns, right? 5, 6, 7% maybe, but honestly, I don't know if you can say that anymore now, right? We got people are happy with getting 4, 5, 6% on their multifamily right now, right? So, but anyways, my point is that you're actually combining something in your financial tool that the pros offset the cons, because the cons of the rate of return is the sequence of returns, the fluctuation of value. So as you go through a time where things are just down, you're able to either leverage yourself or have increased leverage through the hard times, or increase leverage to buy, because that's a time that we want to buy. So this is a paradigm shift, right? Infinite banking is a strategy that you use in your financial plan, but the concept is very much a paradigm shift of actually understanding how these financial tools work in concert with each other. And so yeah, it's very important to understand that. So Erica's going to get into really what is the premise of infinite banking, and that's your compounded interest, and how do we maximize that and really just recapture a lot of that.
Well, that's the biggest thing, like you said, is how they work in concert with one another, which I want to kind of circle in on what he means by that here in just a minute. But we have to, before we put the roof on, we got to lay the foundation. And The entire infinite banking concept is actually predicated on what Albert Einstein calls the eighth wonder of the world. And he says, those who understand it earn it, and those who don't pay it. So like David said, that is referring to compound interest. So for those that aren't familiar with it, the compound interest curve, it starts off small and then it takes off exponentially on the back end, right? Well, most of us, especially in real estate or business, we have this problem of, well, I've saved up enough money and I need to go, now I'm going to go invest it in XYZ deal. Okay. And that's okay. And I'm going to keep saving money until I can do the next deal and then the next one. So over and over and over, we keep taking money out to go invest in real estate. Again, that's not a bad thing. However, now we have a gap between what we have and what we could have had. That's the opportunity cost, but it really represents the most expensive and most valuable resource that we all have, which is time. We can never go back and say, oh, well, I want to gain more time. Once it's spent, we can't get it back. So the whole idea is, well, what if we get out of this either or scenario? I can earn interest or I can go invest. Well, what if I could say, I want to take my money out and go invest in real estate, but as I'm continuing to save money, because that's what we do, as I'm continuing to save money, I'm doing so in a way that I never fall off the compound interest curve. So I can invest in real estate and earn interest. So I never lose that time. I don't have that opportunity cost of having to give up one for the other. And that's what we're wanting to do, is take advantage of the compound interest curve, take advantage of the time that's on our side, and not give it up to have to go do XYZ. We want to go do real estate. We want to encourage people to do real estate. We're doing it ourselves, but we want to provide a yes and where you can do both. Okay. And like David said, this is all about, the bank on yourself, be your own banker, all of those things. Do we want to go, David, do you think we should go through this?
Really, this is a simple slide. I can go through this really quickly. This is going to highlight a couple of things. One, that really banking is really just such a profitable business. Two, this will kind of really highlight that we're never going to see the interest rates that we saw in the 80s. And there's a reason for that, a specific reason that goes even further than what's just going on in the economy. It's their ability to increase their arbitrage on their lending. And what arbitrage is that you have more money coming in than going out. That's a positive arbitrage. If you have less, then that's a negative, right? So in the 80s, right, interest rates were high on both sides, what you pay and what you charge. So at one point in the 80s, banks were paying 9% on deposits, and they were charging 15% on loans. Most people look at that mathematically and they say, wow, the bank's making 6% on that transaction, because hey, they're paying me 9% on my deposit, but if I turn around and get a loan, they're charging me 15. Well, in reality, that's not what they're making. That is the 6% is the spread between it. And here's how the analogy I like to say, and that kind of helps us understand this a little bit. If I was standing outside of a hardware store and Erica came up to me and said, hey, I need a hammer. David, do you have a hammer? I've got $15. I want to buy a hammer from you. And you know that you can go buy the hammer for $9 and you got $9 in your wallet. And you're like, hold on, you go buy the hammer for $9 and turn around and come sell it out or I buy the hammer for $9, sell it to Erica for $15, right? I made a $6 profit on my $9 investment. So think about that. If you invested $9 and you made a $9 profit, you doubled your money. You made 100% return. So on a $6 profit on a $9 investment is a 66.667% rate of return. So the banks were actually lending, because think about that. Whose money are the banks using? They're not using their money. Erica goes in, she gives the bank $100, right? They paid her interest. I come and I borrow money. They're not lending me their money. They're lending me Erica's money. So they're in essence, so that's similar to what's happening here. So if you fast forward to today, which really right now with interest rates so low and talking about negative interest rates and all sorts of things, the banks are really making infinite returns. But let's just mathematically look at this. Let's say that you could get a yield savings account of 1%, right? So let's say the bank pays 1%. And for, personal loans, they're charging about 7. Now these fluctuate with different things, but if you look, that spread is still the same. So mathematically, people are thinking, yeah, it stinks that rates are so low, but banks are still making their 6%. Think about it this way. They're paying $1. Let's say I go and deposit $100 and they pay me $1 in interest for that $100, right? But then Erica comes and borrows that $100 and they charge her 7 in interest. So now they paid $1 to make that same $6 profit, right? That's a 600% return on the bank's money. And then when we talk about something called fractional reserve banking, now they can use that same transaction. They can do that same transaction 9 different times, like as in comparison to the rate in the 80s, right? So it's this fractional reserve banking. They're able to do more and they're able to get a higher spread. So this isn't to say that banks are necessarily bad, although I'm not a big fan of them. In fact, it was crazy. I went and put in $20,000 cash in the bank the other day, and I got ID'd. I sat there for 30 minutes. I'm like, I'm giving you money in my account. I'm not trying, it's just crazy. I mean, and there was another time I went to go take out 50 and I had to wait 2 days.
Oh my gosh.
So
Yeah.
it's
Taking
just
money out of the bank it's a process.
So when we look at this, right, I mean, I just look at this and I want to reduce the amount of money that I'm giving to the banks so that they leverage, because they're leveraging my money. How can I leverage my own money? Right. So when you think about the interest that we pay in our lifetime, I don't know if people know this, but the average person pays 35% of lifetime income, total lifetime income, 35% goes to interest. And traditional financial planning, not so much real estate, but traditional financial planning, somebody looks and says, I'm going to save 5%, right? I'm going to save 5%, and they completely ignore all the interest they're paying, right, out in whatever they're doing. Just to recoup the interest paid each year, you would have to have a 690% rate of return on your 5% of savings invested just to recoup the interest. So what infinite banking is, it's not a strategy it's not your accumulation, your massive growth strategy, but it's a way to accelerate what you're doing in real estate, but also to recapture some of that interest that would be going out to banks and putting that back in your pocket. Because that does 2 things. It gives you more money to grow, and it reduces a wealth eroding factor along the way, so it greatly exponentially increases your compound interest curve. So banks are the most profitable business. How do we privatize the way banks function and leverage, the money? How do we privatize that in our own system? And that's what infinite banking really teaches us.